I'm Ivy, 34, a self-made tech entrepreneur who built a $20 million business from nothing. Growing up, my mum taught me that success comes from hard work and determination, not handouts. I poured my heart into creating something meaningful, then shared that success with my husband's family, treating them as my own. But trust is fragile, especially when money's involved. I never imagined the woman who called me daughter would one day look me in the eyes and call me a lowlife. Before I tell you how I lost my family but saved myself, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join my healing journey. My story begins in Lakefield, a small town in Michigan, where everyone knew each other by name. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. My parents' divorce when I was 9 changed everything. My dad moved across the country and my mum worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I watched her exhaust herself daily just to put food on our table and keep a roof over our heads. That reality shaped me early. While other kids spent weekends playing, I was setting up lemonade stands and offering to fix neighbors' computers for a few dollars. By 13, I had a small business troubleshooting technology issues for elderly folks in our community. They'd pay me $20 to explain how email worked or set up their printers. I saved every penny. High school was a balancing act between maintaining good grades and working part-time at the local electronics store. I wasn't popular, but I was respected for my knowledge. When classmates' phones or laptops broke, they came to me. I loved the feeling of solving problems others couldn't. When college acceptance letters arrived, I chose State University with its excellent computer science program. The scholarship covered tuition, but I still worked evenings and weekends to pay for books and living expenses. Those 4 years blur together in my memory as a constant cycle of classes work and late-night coding sessions. During my junior year, I identified a significant gap in cloud security software. Existing solutions were clunky, expensive, and inefficient. I started developing a streamlined alternative that would be accessible to small and medium businesses, not just corporations with massive IT budgets. My professors noticed my passion project and encouraged me to enter the National Tech Innovation Competition. I didn't expect to win, but my presentation caught the attention of industry professionals. One judge, a venture capitalist named Samuel Wright, offered to meet for coffee to discuss my idea further. "What you've developed has real potential," he said, sliding his business card across the table. "When you're ready to talk funding, call me." I graduated with honors and immediately devoted myself to refining my software. Living on ramen noodles in a tiny apartment, I worked 18-hour days fueled by determination and coffee. 6 months later, I presented my completed prototype at the Eastern Tech Conference. The room was packed with industry insiders and potential investors. My hands shook as I plugged in my laptop, but once I started talking about my creation, the nervousness disappeared. That's where I met Jason. He approached me after my presentation, his blue eyes bright with admiration. "Your solution to the encryption bottleneck issue was brilliant," he said. "I've never seen anyone approach it from that angle." Jason worked for a major tech firm and understood exactly what made my software revolutionary. We talked for hours that evening, our conversation flowing effortlessly from technology to philosophy to our personal dreams. By midnight, I felt like I'd known him forever. Our relationship developed quickly. Jason was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely supportive of my ambitions. Where previous boyfriends had been intimidated by my drive, Jason celebrated it. He'd bring dinner to my apartment when I was coding late and listened patiently as I rambled about technical challenges. 8 months after we met during a weekend trip to the coast, Jason proposed on a moonlit beach. "You're the most extraordinary person I've ever met," he said, opening the velvet box to reveal a diamond ring that must have cost several months of his salary. "I want to build a life with you, support your dreams, grow together." Tears streaming down my face, I said yes. When Jason suggested we skip the prenuptial agreement, something flickered in my mind. "We don't need that paperwork between us," he insisted. "I believe in us completely." Wanting to show equal trust, I agreed, silencing the cautious voice inside me. A month before our wedding, Jason took me to meet his parents. Their house in the historic district of Bellwood surprised me with its grandeur, a colonial-style mansion with manicured gardens and a circular driveway. Jason had mentioned his family was comfortable, but this suggested old money and privilege. Margaret Cooper, my future mother-in-law, greeted us at the door. Tall and elegant in a tailored dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled, she embraced me with practiced warmth. "So this is the brilliant entrepreneur we've heard so much about," she said, her eyes evaluating every detail of my appearance. Jason's father, Richard, was more reserved but cordial, shaking my hand firmly and asking thoughtful questions about my business. His brother Thomas, 2 years younger than Jason, charmed me with witty conversation and genuine interest in my technology background. Throughout dinner in their formal dining room with crystal glasses and silver serving dishes, I felt increasingly self-conscious about my middle-class upbringing. When Margaret asked about my family, I honestly described my mother's multiple jobs and our modest home. "How resilient of her," Margaret replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And your father?" "We lost touch after the divorce," I admitted. "Such a shame," she murmured, exchanging a quick glance with her husband that I couldn't decipher. As we left that night, Jason squeezed my hand. "They loved you," he assured me. I wanted to believe him, ignoring the subtle undercurrent of judgment I'd sensed. After all, they had welcomed me with open arms, calling me the daughter they never had. How could I have known those same arms would later push me away? 6 months after our wedding, my business began to really take off. What started as innovative software caught the attention of major industry players. A series of fortunate connections led to meetings with larger clients, and suddenly I was signing contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The breakthrough came when my security solution prevented a major data breach at a mid-sized financial institution. Word spread quickly through the industry, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I hired my first employees, rented actual office space, and watched my small startup transform into a legitimate company. Success demanded sacrifice. I worked 14-hour days, often returning home long after Jason had gone to bed. Weekends became extensions of the work week. The pressure was immense, but so was the satisfaction of building something meaningful from scratch. Jason initially seemed proud, bragging about my accomplishments to friends and family, but as months passed and my company continued growing, something shifted. "Do you really need to work this Saturday?" he'd ask. "My parents are expecting us for lunch." When the company landed a major government contract pushing our valuation past the $1 million mark, Jason made an unexpected announcement. "I'm quitting my job to help you with the business," he declared over dinner one night. "Are you sure?" I asked, surprised by the sudden decision. "You've worked so hard to reach senior developer status." "Our company is the future," he replied, emphasizing the "our." "Besides, you need support managing the business side while you focus on the technical aspects." I should have defined his role more clearly from the start. While Jason occasionally made useful contributions, mostly he attended networking events, took long lunches with potential clients, and generally became the face people associated with our company. Meanwhile, I remained buried in the actual work that kept us growing. With our increasing income, Jason suggested moving to Bellwood Hills, the exclusive neighborhood where his parents lived. "We can afford it now," he insisted, "and it will be good for business connections." The house we purchased was beautiful, but felt excessive for just the two of us. 5 bedrooms, a home theatre, swimming pool, and manicured gardens maintained by weekly landscapers. The mortgage wasn't a financial strain given our success, but the size emphasized how often I was alone while working. Margaret began stopping by unannounced, usually when Jason was home, but I was locked in my home office working. She'd bring housewarming gifts and decorating suggestions, frequently rearranging furniture, or adding new items without asking me. "This painting would look better here, don't you think?" she'd say, already directing the handyman she'd brought along to move my carefully selected artwork. "The colours you've chosen for the living room are so interesting. Perhaps something more traditional would better suit the house's character." When I'd emerge for a quick coffee break, she'd make subtle comments about my appearance. "Working so hard is admirable, dear, but don't forget a wife has certain responsibilities to maintain herself." Jason always appreciated well-dressed women. The questions about grandchildren started 3 months after we moved in. "Isn't this guest bedroom perfect for a nursery?" Margaret would suggest, running her hand along the walls. "At your age, you don't want to wait too long." I explained that we were focusing on growing the business first, but Margaret wasn't easily dissuaded. "A woman's greatest accomplishment is motherhood," she told me during one particularly uncomfortable lunch. "All this business success is wonderful, but it's not what truly matters in life." Jason, rather than supporting me, began echoing his mother's sentiments. "Maybe we should start thinking about kids," he'd say. "The business is stable now." But it wasn't just stable, it was thriving. We reached a $5 million valuation after securing several enterprise clients. Industry publications featured our innovative approach, and competitors began attempting to replicate our model. This wasn't the time to step back. As my professional responsibilities grew, the divide between Jason and me widened. He spent more evenings at his parents' house for dinner, often not bothering to invite me since, "You're always working anyway." When he was home, conversations revolved around his family's expectations or criticism of my priorities. The first major fight came after I missed a Cooper family tradition, their annual summer garden party, because of an emergency with a major client's system. Jason returned home fuming. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," he snapped. "My mother went to great lengths to introduce you to her friends, and you couldn't even show up." "I told you 3 days ago that this might happen," I replied, exhausted after solving the crisis. "The Westfield account is worth millions. Would you prefer I let it collapse?" "I'd prefer you remember you're part of a family now," he said coldly. "My family has certain expectations." I stayed up late that night staring at my wedding photo, wondering when Jason's support had transformed into pressure to conform to his family's image of a proper wife. Still, I convinced myself that once the business stabilized further, we could find better balance. I had no idea how much more complicated things would soon become. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing contracts when Jason's brother Thomas's name flashed on my phone screen. We'd maintained a friendly relationship, occasionally grabbing lunch when he was near my office. "Ivy, I need your advice," he began, his voice tight. "I've been let go. Budget cuts, they said, but I know it's because I challenged the new VP's strategy." Thomas had worked as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm for years. His sudden unemployment shocked us both. Over dinner that night, Jason suggested something unexpected. "Thomas could stay with us while he job hunts," he proposed. "We have 3 empty bedrooms after all." "How long are we talking about?" I asked cautiously. "Just a few weeks," Jason assured me. "A month tops. He's highly qualified. He'll find something quickly." Those few weeks stretched into 3 months. Thomas moved into our guest house, a charming cottage on our property originally intended as my future office space. Initially, he seemed motivated, scheduling interviews and networking aggressively, but as weeks passed, his urgency faded. He began consulting on nebulous projects that never seemed to generate actual income. Meanwhile, Jason gave him access to our pool house bar, home theatre and gym facilities. Thomas essentially enjoyed a luxury vacation on our dime. When I tentatively raised concerns to Jason, his response was immediate defensiveness. "He's family Ivy. We can't just throw him out on the street." "I'm not suggesting that," I clarified. "But maybe we should set some expectations about his job search and contributions to household expenses." Jason looked at me like I'd suggested something reprehensible. "Wow, I never thought you'd be so callous about family in need." I backed down, not wanting to seem heartless. Instead, I channeled my energy into growing the business further, securing new clients, and refining our product offerings. Despite the personal distractions, the company continued its upward trajectory. 6 months into Thomas's temporary stay, another family crisis emerged. During Sunday dinner at his parents' house, Richard pulled me aside while Jason helped Margaret in the kitchen. "I wanted to speak with you privately," he began, his normally confident demeanor subdued. "Cooper Industries is facing some challenges. A major investment went sideways, and we're looking at potential bankruptcy if we can't secure immediate capital." The family business, a manufacturing company that had operated for 3 generations, had apparently made several ill-advised expansions under Richard's leadership. Now they faced catastrophic losses unless they could quickly inject several $1 million. "I wouldn't ask this of you, Ivy, but you're family now." Richard continued, his hand on my shoulder. "A bridge loan of $2 million would save everything my grandfather and father built. Everything that should one day pass to Jason and Thomas." The amount made my stomach clench, but I had recently completed a funding round that left us with healthy cash reserves. Still, $2 million wasn't a casual loan, it represented a significant portion of our operating capital. "I'll need to review our finances," I said carefully, "and draw up proper loan documentation." Richard's expression tightened momentarily before relaxing into grateful relief. Of course. I wouldn't expect anything less from a savvy businesswoman like yourself." Against my financial advisor's explicit recommendation, I authorized the loan to Cooper Industries 2 weeks later. Jason was ecstatic, embracing me tightly and telling me I'd saved his family's legacy. Margaret actually cried when she heard holding my hands and calling me the daughter we always needed. The loan paperwork specified a 3-year repayment plan with reasonable interest. Richard signed it with flourish, assuring me this was merely a formality between family. The gratitude lasted approximately 3 weeks. During a charity gala where I donated significantly on behalf of our company, Margaret approached me with a brilliant smile. "Darling, we're planning a family vacation to the Maldives next month. Richard's doctor insists he needs to de-stress after this horrible business ordeal." Before I could respond, she continued, "We've found a marvelous private island resort. 6 bedrooms, full staff, completely exclusive. Jason thought you wouldn't mind handling the arrangements since you're so good with these details." The arrangements turned out to be a $85,000 week-long vacation for the entire Cooper family, including Thomas and his new girlfriend. When I expressed concern about the extravagance so soon after their financial crisis, Jason dismissed it. "Dad needs this to recover," he insisted. "Besides, the business loan is completely separate from family matters. You're not struggling financially, so why does it matter?" I reluctantly agreed, hoping the luxury trip would indeed bring us closer as a family. Instead, it became painfully clear how they viewed my role in the family dynamic. One evening, while retrieving my forgotten sunglasses from the villa's dining area, I overheard Margaret, Richard, and Thomas talking on the terrace. Hidden by gauzy curtains, I froze when I heard my name. "Ivy's money is essentially family money now," Richard was saying casually. "The business might legally be in her name, but as Jason's wife, her assets are functionally Cooper assets." "She's certainly loosened her grip on the purse strings lately," Margaret added with a laugh. "Though it took some careful manoeuvring. That middle-class mentality makes her so cautious with wealth." "To the Cooper golden goose," Thomas joked, and I heard the clink of glasses. I slipped away silently, my hands trembling. Later that night, I tried to discuss what I'd overheard with Jason. "You're being oversensitive," he said dismissively. "It was probably just light-hearted banter. You know how my family jokes." "It didn't sound like joking to me," I insisted. "They were literally toasting to me as their golden goose." Jason's expression hardened. "You're twisting their words. After all you've put the family through, with your constant working and absence from family functions, you should be grateful they've accepted you at all." His response left me speechless. Somehow, I had become the villain in this narrative despite financially supporting his entire family. Despite the growing tension at home, my business continued to flourish. We hit $15 million in valuation after a particularly innovative security feature gained industry recognition. My photo appeared in Business Innovators magazine, profiling top tech entrepreneurs under 40. Margaret suddenly found me much more interesting to her social circle. "Janet Blackwell asked if you might speak at her charity luncheon," she informed me one afternoon. "Her husband runs Blackwell Financial. Such useful connections for you." These useful connections invariably resulted in me donating substantial sums to various causes Margaret deemed important. Without consulting me, she began volunteering my participation and financial support for her social circle's pet projects. "I've told the Brightons you'll sponsor their son's startup," she announced over an impromptu lunch she'd organised at my home. "Only $50,000, a mere token for them to take you seriously in their circles." When I explained I needed to vet any business before investing, Margaret looked genuinely confused. "But they're members at the Bellwood Country Club, dear. Their family has summered in Martha's Vineyard for generations." The entitled attitude extended beyond Margaret. Thomas, still living in our guest house 10 months after his temporary arrangement began, started using my company credit card for business lunches, where he claimed to be networking on my behalf. Jason's spending similarly increased designer clothes, a new sports car, expensive watches, all without discussion. I felt increasingly used but continued supporting everyone. After all, they were my family now, or so I thought. The day my company hit a $20 million valuation should have been the proudest of my professional life. After years of 80-hour work weeks, constant innovation, and relentless persistence, we'd reached a milestone few startups ever achieve. My core team celebrated with champagne in the office. My COO Diane raised her glass with tears in her eyes. "You built something extraordinary, Ivy, from nothing but your brilliant mind and sheer determination. I wished I could have brought that moment of pure accomplishment home with me, but the Cooper household had become a place where my success was simultaneously exploited and diminished." That evening, I arrived home to find Margaret, Richard, and Jason examining blueprints spread across our dining table. "There she is," Richard exclaimed with unusual enthusiasm. "The woman of the hour." "We saw the announcement," Margaret added. $20 million. We're so proud." Jason kissed my cheek, a gesture that had grown increasingly rare. "Perfect timing, actually. We were just discussing the renovation plans." "Renovation plans?" I asked, setting down my laptop bag. "For Mom and Dad's house," Jason explained, as if this should be obvious. "The East Wing has those structural issues we talked about, remember? And while they're fixing that, it makes sense to update the kitchen and master bath. We had never discussed any such thing. Before I could point this out, Margaret jumped in. The foundation issues are quite serious, she said gravely. Our contractor says it's bordering on unsafe. We've put it off as long as possible, but with Richard's heart condition, the stress isn't good for him. This was the first I'd heard of any heart condition. Richard patted his chest dramatically. Nothing serious, he assured me, contradicting his wife's claim. Just a little murmur the doctor's keeping an eye on. I stays. They showed me the renovation plans, which were comprehensive to say the least. What had begun as structural repairs somehow included a gourmet kitchen remodel, spa-like master bathroom home, theatre installation, and complete landscaping overhaul. The estimate is just under $1.2 million, Jason said casually, but these improvements will increase the property value significantly. The assumption that I would fund this massive renovation without any prior discussion left me momentarily speechless. I looked at their expectant faces and realized they saw absolutely nothing wrong with this request. I need to think about this, I finally managed. We should discuss the budget and priorities. Margaret's smile faltered. Budget, darling, you just hit $20 million. Surely a small family renovation isn't going to break the bank. Business valuation isn't the same as liquid cash, I explained, keeping my tone even. Most of that value is tied up in the company itself. But you do have investment accounts, Jason interjected. I saw the statements. The casual admission that he'd been reviewing my financial statements without discussion sent a chill through me. Still, I tried to set reasonable boundaries. I can help with the essential structural repairs, I offered. Let's say $200,000 as a starting point. We can reassess if costs run higher for the critical safety issues. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. $200,000 would barely cover the kitchen appliances. Margaret scoffed. Are you really going to pinch pennies while Richard and I live in a potentially dangerous house? Rather than escalate the tension, I agreed to review the plans more thoroughly and discuss it with our financial advisor. This placated them temporarily, though Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes for the remainder of the evening. 2 weeks later, I received a call from my assistant while in a client meeting. Mrs. Cooper has authorized work to begin on her renovation, she informed me, confusion evident in her voice. The contractor called to confirm the initial payment of $300,000. He said Mr. Jason Cooper told him to contact our office directly for payment processing. I excused myself from the meeting and called the contractor immediately. He confirmed that work had already begun, based on Jason's assurance that funding was approved. Furthermore, Margaret had upgraded numerous elements from the original plan, pushing the new estimate closer to $2 million. That evening, I confronted Jason in my home office, showing him the revised contracts I'd obtained from the contractor. You told them to start work without consulting me, I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady, and your mother increased the budget by nearly $1 million. Mom has excellent taste, he replied defensively. The original fixtures were bargain basement quality. Would you really want your in-laws living with substandard materials when you can easily afford better? That's not the point, Jason. The point is that decisions were made behind my back about spending my money. His expression darkened. Your money, that's how you see it. After all this time, you still think of it as your money, not our money. The company is legally in my name, I reminded him. I built it from nothing before we even met. And I've supported you every step of the way, he shouted, suddenly furious. I gave up my career to help you. My family has opened doors for you in circles you never could have accessed otherwise. While attempting to calm the situation, I received an alert from my banking app. A transfer of $500,000 had just been processed from our joint investment account. Did you make a transfer just now? I asked, showing him my phone screen. Jason's momentary look of guilt confirmed my suspicions before he could compose himself. Dad needed to secure some materials before prices increased further. It's just good business. Something inside me broke. I need to see all the account statements. Now. You don't trust me? He asked incredulously. Trust is earned through transparency. I replied, my voice now eerily calm. Show me the statements. Jason stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Instead of following, I called my financial advisor and requested an immediate audit of all our accounts, both personal and business. The results were devastating. Over the past year, Jason had transferred nearly $3 million from our accounts to his parents, his brother, and various luxury purchases. Some transfers were disguised as business expenses or investment opportunities, but most were simply direct deposits to Cooper family members. When confronted with the evidence the following day, Jason didn't deny it. Instead, he justified it. "Everything I've done has been for our family," he insisted. "You're so obsessed with building your business empire that you've forgotten what really matters. My parents needed help. Thomas needed help. What good is all this money if we can't support the people we love?" "Support is one thing," I replied, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "Secret financial draining is another. From now on, I'm separating our finances. You'll have a reasonable allowance, and any major expenses need to be discussed together." Jason's face contorted with rage. "An allowance, like I'm a child, after everything I've contributed to your success." "What exactly have you contributed, Jason, specifically? What strategic decisions have you made? What technical innovations? What client relationships have you personally developed and maintained?" Instead of answering, he stormed out, slamming the front door so hard, a picture fell from the wall and shattered. 20 minutes later, he returned with reinforcements, Margaret and Richard both wearing expressions of righteous indignation. "Jason tells us you're cutting him off financially." Margaret began without preamble, settling herself on my living room sofa as if presiding over a tribunal. "That you've accused him of stealing from you." "I discovered unauthorized transfers of over $3 million, I stated calmly despite my racing heart. "Money taken without discussion or agreement." "That money was being used for family purposes," Richard interjected. "The loan you provided to Cooper Industries, for instance, saved a multi-generational business. Would you have preferred we lost everything?" "That loan had terms paperwork and your signature agreeing to repayment," I reminded him. "Have any payments been made according to the schedule we established?" Richard's silence was answer enough. "The money isn't the real issue here," Margaret declared, smoothing her expensive slacks. "The issue is your priorities, Ivy. From day one, you've put your little computer business above family. You've missed gatherings, been distracted during holidays, and now you're bean counting every dollar as if we're strangers rather than family. My little computer business is the source of the wealth you've been enjoying," I pointed out, "and family doesn't drain bank accounts behind each other's backs." Jason, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "You've changed, Ivy. Success has made you cold and suspicious. The woman I married would have understood that family comes first." "The man I married promised to be my partner," I countered, "not someone who would secretly funnel millions to his family while gaslighting me about my priorities." Margaret stood suddenly, her face flushed with anger. "I've tried to welcome you into this family despite your background, your social awkwardness, your obsession with work. I've introduced you to people who matter, guided you in appropriate behaviors for someone in your new position, and this is how you repay our generosity by accusing my son of theft." Her voice rose with each word until she was nearly shouting, "You've never belonged here, Ivy. You're just a lowlife who got lucky with some computer program. This family would be better off if you just left." The room fell silent. I looked to Jason, waiting for him to defend me, to express outrage at his mother's words. He stared at the floor, saying nothing. In that moment of deafening silence, everything became crystal clear. I was not family to these people. I never had been. I was merely a resource to be drained until nothing remained. "I think you should all leave now," I said quietly. "This is my house too," Jason protested weakly. "Is it? Who paid for it? Who maintains it? Who funds the lifestyle you've grown accustomed to?" My voice remained steady, despite the storm raging within me. "You have until tomorrow to decide where your loyalty lies. With me as your wife, or with them." Margaret laughed bitterly as she gathered her designer handbag. "As if that's even a question. Blood will always be thicker than water, dear. You'll never come before his real family." As they left, Jason trailing behind his parents like an obedient child, I stood alone in the cavernous house that had never truly felt like a home. For the first time in years, I saw my situation with perfect clarity, and I knew exactly what needed to be done. I didn't sleep that night. How could I when my entire world had imploded, the betrayal cut so deep that physical pain radiated through my chest as I paced the empty house, alternating between rage and devastating sadness. By dawn, tears had given way to resolve. I made 3 phone calls before the sun fully rose to my business attorney, to my personal financial advisor, and to a private investigator I'd worked with on corporate security matters. "Melissa, I need your help with an urgent situation," I told my attorney. "My husband has been making unauthorized transfers from both personal and business accounts. I need to protect the company immediately." "Come to my office at 8, she replied without hesitation. Bring all the documentation you have. Melissa's corner office offered a sweeping view of the city where I'd built my business from nothing. The irony wasn't lost on me that I could see my company headquarters from her window, the logo I'd designed myself illuminated against the morning sky. Based on what you've shown me, we have serious concerns, Melissa stated after reviewing the financial records. The business needs to be insulated from personal matters immediately. And Ivy, I have to ask, are you considering divorce? The word hung in the air, simultaneously terrifying and liberating. I think that decision has already been made for me, I replied quietly. But before I take that step, I need to secure the business. Too many people depend on me, employees, clients, partners. Jason could potentially claim half the company's value, she warned, as your husband during its growth period without a prenup. But not if there's financial misconduct, I interjected, which we have documented evidence of. Melissa nodded thoughtfully. That certainly strengthens our position. Let's move quickly. Over the next 12 hours, we executed a comprehensive protection plan. Corporate accounts were secured with new authorization protocols. Critical business operations were transferred to our most trusted employees. Documentation of every unauthorized transfer was meticulously organized and time-stamped. My financial advisor, Trevor, met us in the afternoon with more troubling news. Jason's been making inquiries about liquidity options for your company shares, he informed me grimly. He contacted 3 different investment banks last week, presenting himself as a co-owner, authorized to explore partial sale options. The revelation sent ice through my veins. Jason wasn't just stealing money, he was actively exploring ways to sell pieces of my life's work without my knowledge. He has no legal authority to do that, Melissa reassured me, but it shows intent we can use in proceedings. The private investigator arrived next, bringing detailed reports of the Cooper family's financial activities over the past 2 years. What emerged was a pattern of escalating entitlement and exploitation that had accelerated dramatically in recent months. Cooper Industries hasn't been profitable for years, he explained, showing me documents that contradicted everything Richard had told me. The loan you provided didn't save a thriving family business. It temporarily bailed out a company that was already essentially insolvent due to mismanagement. Further investigation revealed that Thomas had never actually been laid off. He'd been fired for expense account abuse. Margaret's social standing was maintained almost entirely through my donations to her preferred charities. The family renovation project included luxury features that had nothing to do with structural integrity. They've been systematically bleeding you dry, the investigator concluded. And based on recent activity, they're accelerating their timeline. I returned home that evening emotionally exhausted but strategically prepared. To my surprise, Jason was waiting, sitting in the darkened living room with a glass of scotch. "Where have you been all day?" he demanded. "I've been calling for hours." "Working," I replied, simply setting down my laptop bag. "How was your day with your parents?" He ignored the question. "Mum's upset. Dad it too. They feel you've been unfairly accusatory." "And how do you feel, Jason?" I asked, studying his face in the dim light. He sighed dramatically. "I think you're overreacting to normal family financial support. But I'm willing to compromise. We can set up more formal tracking of family expenses if that makes you feel better." His offer might once have seemed reasonable, even generous. Now I recognized it as the manipulative tactic it was, offering a minor concession to maintain access to the resources he felt entitled to. "I think we need time apart," I said carefully, "to reevaluate our priorities." "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed. "We don't need separation, we need better communication." For the next hour, Jason alternated between attempting to charm me, making me feel guilty, and subtly threatening what divorce would mean for my company. When none of these approaches worked, he switched tactics entirely. "Actually, there's something else we need to discuss," he said, his tone suddenly businesslike. "Dad's identified an investment opportunity that could really benefit us. It requires about $800,000 by next week, but the potential returns are enormous." I almost laughed at the transparency of it. Even now, after everything, he was still trying to extract money. "I'll think about it," I replied non-committally. This seemed to satisfy him temporarily. He kissed my cheek before heading upstairs, apparently believing he'd successfully navigated our conflict and things would return to their profitable normal. I spent the night in the guest room, finalizing plans and making necessary arrangements. Early the next morning, I contacted a real estate agent I trusted and gave her instructions for securing off-site accommodations. I packed a single suitcase with essential clothing and irreplaceable personal items, photos from before I met Jason, my mother's jewelry, the business plan I'd written on a coffee shop napkin 5 years earlier. The divorce papers prepared overnight by Melissa waited in my briefcase. They detailed the financial misconduct, the breach of fiduciary duty, and my claims to the business I'd built. The terms were fair but firm. Jason would receive a reasonable settlement, but my company would remain solely mine. That evening, I prepared Jason's favorite meal. We ate together at our dining table for what I knew would be the last time. He seemed relieved, believing the elaborate dinner signaled my capitulation. I spoke with Dad today. He mentioned casually over dessert. He's drawing up the paperwork for that investment. I told him you were on board. Did you? I smiled politely, letting him believe whatever he needed to. After dinner, Jason went upstairs to shower. I placed the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, my wedding ring on top of them. Then I took my packed suitcase, got into my car, and drove away from the mansion that had never been a home. As I merged onto the highway, a strange combination of heartbreak and liberation washed over me. I was leaving behind a marriage and a family that I'd once believed in completely. But I was also escaping a prison of exploitation that would have eventually consumed everything I'd worked for. In my rearview mirror, the lights of Bellwood Hills grew smaller until they disappeared completely. Ahead, the open road offered something I hadn't felt in years, the freedom to determine my own worth. The first call came at 7:36 the following morning. I was already settled in a serviced apartment downtown, preparing for a company leadership meeting where I would address the changes ahead. "You can't be serious!" Jason's voice exploded through the phone. "Divorce papers." "Are you out of your mind?" I remained calm. "I think the papers explain my position clearly, Jason. This is about yesterday, isn't it? About Mum's comment. She was just upset. You know how she gets. We can work through this." "This isn't about one comment," I replied. "It's about a pattern of behavior from your entire family, including you. The papers document the financial misconduct. My decision is final." "You'll regret this," he warned before hanging up. The calls continued throughout the day, oscillating between rage pleading and manipulative guilt trips. By afternoon, Margaret and Richard had joined the campaign, leaving voicemails ranging from tearful apologies to thinly veiled threats. "We've always considered you family, Ivy." Margaret's message played her voice carefully modulated to project wounded dignity. "Families have disagreements, but they don't abandon each other. Think of what this will do to Jason, to all of us." What surprised me most was my lack of emotional response to their pressure. Where once their disapproval would have sent me into anxious people-pleasing mode, now I felt only a detached clarity. The spell was broken. My attorney called with updates. Jason's contacted 3 divorce attorneys already. The first 2 turned him down after hearing the circumstances and reviewing the documentation we provided. And the third took the case but warned him it's an uphill battle given the evidence of financial misconduct. They'll likely push for a quick settlement. I had expected this initial reaction, denial, followed by anger and attempts to intimidate. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly the Cooper family facade would completely crumble once their financial pipeline was cut off. 1 week after I left, Diane forwarded me an email Jason had sent to our entire executive team, presenting himself as co-owner of the company and instructing them to copy him on all strategic decisions. The team, already briefed on the situation, had collectively ignored it. "He showed up at the office yesterday," Diane informed me during our daily call. "Security didn't let him past the lobby as instructed. He made quite a scene. 2 weeks in, Thomas was forced to vacate the guest house after utilities were shut off. I had been paying those bills automatically. According to my private investigator, he'd moved back into his childhood bedroom at his parents' house, unable to afford independent housing after years of living on my subsidies. The Cooper family renovation project ground to a halt when payments stopped. The contractor, upon learning of the situation, contacted me directly. Mrs. Cooper assured us additional funds were coming," he explained awkwardly. "She authorised several major upgrades just last week, including imported marble and custom cabinetry that's already been ordered. I'm no longer responsible for those costs," I informed him. "Any contracts signed after the date of separation will need to be addressed with the Coopers directly." A month into our separation, Jason's tone changed dramatically. The angry calls were replaced by conciliatory messages, even declarations of love and remorse. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said in one voicemail. "I see now how we took advantage of your generosity. I miss you, Ivy. The house feels empty without you. We can start over, do things differently. I didn't respond to these emotional appeals, communicating only through attorneys. The financial picture for the Cooper family was growing increasingly dire. Without my constant influx of cash, their true financial situation was rapidly becoming apparent to everyone in their social circle. Richard's business loan came due according to our original agreement, but Cooper Industries couldn't make the payment. The company teetered on bankruptcy once again, this time with no bailout in sight. Margaret's position in her precious social hierarchy suffered a dramatic reversal when she could no longer make generous donations or host lavish events. Several charity boards quietly asked her to step down, citing her other commitments. The foreclosure notice on the Cooper family home appeared exactly 6 weeks after I left. They had apparently been leveraging the property for additional loans, counting on my money to make payments I knew nothing about. Thomas, faced with the reality of his situation, finally found employment not at an executive level, but as an entry-level marketing coordinator at a small local firm. The position came with a salary approximately 1/6 of what he'd earned before his termination. He's actually showing up to work on time every day, my investigator reported with a touch of amusement. Amazing what necessity will do. Throughout this period, Jason's attempts to claim half my business continued though, with decreasing vigour as the evidence against him mounted. The divorce proceedings moved forward, with his attorney making increasingly desperate counteroffers as their position weakened. 3 months after our separation, we faced each other in court for the first time. Jason looked diminished, somehow his designer clothes replaced by an off-the-rack suit that didn't quite fit properly. The confident swagger had given way to a nervous energy as he avoided meeting my eyes. My attorney presented comprehensive documentation of the financial misconduct, unauthorized transfers, misappropriation of business funds, attempts to sell company assets without authority. Jason's attorney offered weak objections, but the pattern was undeniable. In light of the evidence presented, the court finds significant breach of fiduciary duty, the judge stated. The business entities shall remain solely with the plaintiff, with a modest settlement to be negotiated for the defendant in recognition of the marriage duration. Outside the courthouse, Margaret waited with Richard. As I walked past them toward my car, Margaret stepped into my path. "You've destroyed this family," she hissed, her perfectly maintained facade cracking to reveal the bitterness beneath. "Was that your plan all along? Marry into a respectable family, then tear it apart?" I stopped and looked at her directly, no longer intimidated by her judgment. "Your family was financially drowning long before I arrived, Margaret. I just temporarily delayed the inevitable. Perhaps instead of blaming me, you should ask yourselves why your lifestyle required constant financial infusions from someone you considered beneath you." As I drove away, I glimpsed them in my rearview mirror, 3 people who had once felt entitled to everything I'd built, now facing the consequences of their own actions. The sense of justice was complicated by genuine sadness for what might have been had our relationship been built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. The following week, I received an unexpected email from a woman named Laura Winters. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. "You don't know me personally," she wrote, "but I was at several of Margaret Cooper's charity events where you spoke. I wanted to reach out because I heard about your situation from mutual acquaintances and it resonated deeply with me. 3 years ago, I went through something remarkably similar with the Cooper family." Laura, it turned out, had briefly dated Thomas before me. The pattern was identical: initial charm, giving way to financial exploitation, and eventual discard when she established boundaries. 2 other women contacted me with similar stories after Laura's account circulated within certain social circles. A pattern emerged of a family that habitually identified financially successful individuals, pulled them into their orbit, drained their resources, and discarded them when the well ran dry. I had simply been their most successful target to date. As the divorce finalized and the dust settled, I received one final communication from Jason, a forwarded email showing he'd started dating the recently divorced heir to a regional banking fortune. Some patterns, it seemed, were too deeply ingrained to break. The first few months after the divorce were the hardest. Despite knowing I'd made the right decision, grief ambushed me at unexpected moments. I'd catch myself picking up my phone to share good news with Jason, only to remember that our relationship had been built on extraction, not love. Nights were the worst. In the quiet darkness of my new apartment, doubts crept in. Had I been too harsh, too unforgiving? Could we have worked things out if I'd tried harder? These thoughts would spiral until dawn, leaving me exhausted and emotionally raw. Recognizing I needed help, I started seeing Dr. Alicia Martinez, a therapist specializing in recovery from financial abuse and toxic relationships. "What you're experiencing is normal," she assured me during our first session. "You're grieving not just the relationship you lost, but the relationship you thought you had. That's a profound double loss." Through weekly sessions, Dr. Martinez helped me recognize the subtle warning signs I'd ignored, the boundaries I'd allowed to be trampled, and the people-pleasing tendencies that had made me vulnerable to exploitation. "You weren't naive," she emphasized when I berated myself for missing what now seemed like obvious red flags. "You were trusting and generous, positive qualities that were weaponized against you. The responsibility lies with those who chose to exploit your goodness, not with you for having those qualities." Gradually, I rebuilt my sense of self. The business continued thriving, despite the personal turmoil reaching a $30 million valuation by year's end. I poured myself into innovation, client relationships, and mentoring my team. Work became not an escape, but a healthy channel for my energy and creativity. As my confidence returned, I made a decision to use my experience and resources to help others. I established the Phoenix Scholarship for Women in Technology, providing not just financial support, but mentorship to young women from disadvantaged backgrounds pursuing careers in tech. Success means nothing if it doesn't create opportunities for others. I told the first cohort of scholarship recipients at our inaugural dinner, "Your value isn't determined by what you can provide to those who would take from you, but by what you choose to build and who you choose to lift up along the way." The scholarship program expanded rapidly, gaining industry recognition and corporate sponsorships. Each time I received a thank you email from a recipient or watched a young woman present her innovative project, I felt another piece of my healing fall into place. I also began hosting monthly workshops for entrepreneurs on financial boundaries and partnership agreements. "Learn from my $20 million mistake" became my opening line, usually generating nervous laughter that broke the ice for deeper discussions. Through these professional connections, I gradually rebuilt my social circle. No longer surrounded by people who viewed me as a resource to be drained, I formed genuine friendships based on mutual respect and shared values. Weekend hiking trips, book club discussions, and impromptu dinner gatherings filled the spaces once occupied by obligatory Cooper family functions. 14 months after the divorce, while shopping for a birthday gift for my assistant, I literally bumped into Margaret Cooper at an upscale department store. For a moment, neither of us spoke, equally stunned by the encounter. She looked different, older, less polished. Her designer clothes had been replaced by off-brand alternatives that mimicked the luxury styles she'd once worn. I noticed she wasn't shopping but arranging a display of handbags. She was working there. "Ivy," she finally acknowledged stiffly. "What a surprise." "Hello, Margaret," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the surreal nature of the moment. An awkward silence stretched between us until she sighed heavily. "I suppose you're enjoying this, seeing me brought so low." "I take no pleasure in anyone's hardship," I answered honestly. "Not even yours." "Okay." Her expression softened marginally. "Perhaps I misjudged some things about you." It was as close to an apology as Margaret Cooper would ever come. "The family has faced challenges since you left." "I heard about Richard's business," I said neutrally. "Complete bankruptcy." She confirmed, a flash of the old bitterness returning. "The house is gone. Richard's health declined afterward. Thomas is barely supporting himself. And Jason is dating Elaine Westfield, last I heard." I finished for her. Margaret's eyes widened slightly. "You know about that small world?" I shrugged. "Especially in certain circles. She's not as accommodating as you were," Margaret admitted, adjusting her employee name tag. "The relationship has been turbulent." I simply nodded, unsurprised. Jason would never change his patterns, just his targets. "I should get back to work," Margaret said, after another uncomfortable silence. "My supervisor is quite strict about break times." As she turned to leave, I felt a surprising lack of resentment. This woman, who had once called me a lowlife, who had orchestrated the systematic draining of my resources while simultaneously denigrating my worth, now stood before me, humbled by consequences of her own making. "Margaret," I called softly. She paused, turning back with a wary expression. "I hope things improve for your family. Genuinely." Surprise flickered across her face, followed by a complex emotion I couldn't quite identify. She nodded once before walking away, shoulders straighter than before. That brief encounter provided an unexpected sense of closure. I had neither gloated over her downfall nor allowed her to pull me back into their toxic dynamic. Instead, I'd maintained both dignity and compassion, a balance that represented how far I'd come. In the months that followed, I cautiously began dating again. The experience with Jason had left deep scars, but Dr. Martinez helped me recognize that closing myself off from connection wasn't healing. It was just another form of allowing past trauma to control my future. My first relationship after the divorce ended amicably after 4 months when we recognized fundamental differences in our values. Rather than seeing this as a failure, I celebrated my ability to establish and maintain healthy boundaries from the start. The right relationship won't require you to diminish yourself, Dr. Martinez reminded me. It will expand who you are, not contract it. I carried those words with me as I continued building both my company and my personal life. The pain of betrayal gradually faded, replaced by hard-earned wisdom and deepened empathy for others facing similar struggles. 2 years after walking away from my marriage, I received an Industry Leadership Award, recognizing both business innovation and community impact through the scholarship program. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience that included many young women I'd mentored, I felt a profound sense of peace. Success isn't measured by a valuation or a bank account, I told the audience. It's measured by your ability to remain true to yourself, to lift others as you climb, and to recognize your intrinsic worth beyond what you can provide to others. I paused, reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. Sometimes walking away isn't losing everything, it's finally finding yourself. And that self-discovery is worth more than anything anyone could ever take from you. The standing ovation that followed wasn't what moved me to tears. It was the realization that I finally completely believed those words myself. We all face moments that define us, not the moments when others attempt to assign our value, but the moments when we firmly decide our own worth. My moment came not when I built a $20 million company, but when I refused to remain in a relationship that required me to continuously prove my value through financial sacrifice. True wealth, I've learned, isn't measured in dollars. It's found in self-respect and genuine connections, and in the courage to walk away from people who see you as a resource, rather than a person worthy of love and respect for exactly who you are. What's your defining moment been? The time when you chose your own worth over others' expectations? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to join me on this journey of healing and rediscovery. Remember that your value is inherent, not earned, and certainly not dependent on what you can provide to others. Thank you for listening, and may you always know your true worth.